folding in the sides of your apron neck straps. The two sides and the bottom, that's opposite of the side where you created your two little notches. You're really only folding in about 1/4 of an inch, so it's not very much. I can easily, you can kind of see 1/4 of an inch is just about one little bracket there. So it's about 1/4 of this 2-inch ruler. So I'm gonna fold that in about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm just gonna be pinning along. So for those of you who can't see super close, once I get to the end, I've folded both sides down and then I fold the bottom up. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the other strap, but for now I'm gonna just show you guys how I'm ironing this one, and you guys can work on the other step. If you've got an iron that's powerful like mine, just be careful when you are ironing, especially if you have a steam feature, because you can very easily get burned, especially if you've never used an iron before. Then they have you folding this in half. I'm gonna do the same thing and just iron it nice and flat. Again, I want those crisp edges as much as possible. This will also make it a lot easier when you start stitching. If you have it already nice and flat and pressed together, then you don't have to worry about fabric shifting or bubbling or moving as you're trying to stitch it closed. Now, the way they have you pinning, especially to go into the machine, is actually perpendicular to the edge. One neck strap that is ready to go, ready and pinned, and then we'll get to stitching next. But let me finish the other side and then I'll show you how to stitch the top for that. So the first step on your instructions, stitching right along the outer edge or the open edge and what we call a top stitch. And basically that's just to secure the two sides together, make sure this is a fully closed seam. Because I'm trying to stitch as close as possible to the edge of this fabric, I'm actually gonna line up the edge of this fabric not with the edge of the foot or with any of these half seam allowances. I'm actually gonna line it up with where I see the needle going down into the machine. So I'm lining this up actually roughly a little bit past the center of the sewing foot. So you'll see there's a little bit of a split there before it goes out into the fork. I'm placing my edge just a little bit past the center. That way it's close enough to the edge without missing the edge, and that way I'm still catching both sides of the edge. Now, just to double check, if I want to use my side knob to just move the needle into the down position, that's going to actually show me whether or not I've hit the fabric or if I've completely missed it. It looks like I've hit it, So I'm gonna keep going. And then I'm gonna stitch a couple stitches down, and I wanna push the reverse in order to make sure I back stitch a little bit. What the back stitch does is it just helps secure the edge of the fabric so that it doesn't unravel. I'm keeping my eye on making sure that edge is lined up exactly where I started. And I'm taking my pins out ahead of time to make sure that I'm still lining up these edges as much as possible, just in case they got moved while I wasn't looking. Now, when I get to the end, because I've got so much bulk in here, just go slow and make sure you're careful. Before I get to the end, I'm actually going to manually pump this so that it stays in the down position, and then I'm going to lift my foot and rotate my fabric. And then when you get to the end, remember, again, we still want to do that back stitch anytime we end a stitch. So if you look really close here, you can see there's a little bit of extra thickness where that white is at the end where I backstitched. That's at the beginning and at the end. And the rest of the stitches you can see are nice and clean all the way down. Okay, so that's one side, that's one neck strap that I've got finished. Whenever you're done, you're gonna wanna make sure that all of the excess thread is nice and trimmed, easy and neat. The reason we're gonna leave this edge raw is because this is eventually gonna get stitched onto the apron and you'll never see it. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other neck strap, and then I'll show you guys how to attach those onto your main apron. Next step is to add our neck straps to our main apron. We made little notches here at the top, if you guys remember. So one here and one here. So we want to match up our notches. They've asked you to actually make sure that the folded edge, so that's this edge that doesn't have the stitching on it, is facing inwards. I'm just going to stick a pin in there just to make sure it stays in place. And then next step is to just stitch across the top. Now you're still going to do a back stitch because that's going to secure this neck strap to the apron. And my 1/2 inch mark on here is going to line up with this second tick mark on my metal plate. And I don't need to go across the entire thing. I'm going to do the same little reverse stitch to secure the edges. You can see here I've double stitched or back stitched on both ends to really just secure that. See, when I flip this over, it's going to be nice and clean, and it's also going to be tight. I want it to be sturdy so that it doesn't just easily rip out. I'm going to do the same thing on the other neck strap. So there you can see my top edge, both sides are going to be stitched across, so that way when I have my folded edge, the top will be nice and clean with no raw edges.